Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin and BFA is coming out in less than a week. It's a very exciting time, but everybody is going to be back to questing. We're going to be taking our main characters, our level 110s, and grinding them up to level 120. So some of you guys are probably wondering, what is the fastest way of going about leveling? Now, I don't want to showcase you just about, every single quest line to do. I don't want to have to spoil you guys the experience. I think if you're trying to quest through it as fast as you want to, if you want to quest slowly, enjoy the story, be my guest. But if you are somebody who wants to have the most efficient build for your rogue, the fastest questing, the most reliable playstyle, reliable build, then this video is going to give you guys a few tips of what I'm personally going to do when I'm leveling as my rogue in BFA. But before we get into the actual tips as well as the build, we are going to take a look at a little bit of the preparation. What should you be prepared with? What items should you get in order to help you quest a little bit faster if you're trying to be super efficient about it? The first part of the prep work is the legendaries, and you should get yourself at least a few legendaries before you head into BFA. There's a lot of legendaries designed for rogues when it comes to questing, as well as being more efficient, whether it is for damage or self-sustain. The first legendary I would recommend everybody to get is the Shoulder legendary, which gives you crit chance every time you get out of stealth, which does work with Vanish. Now, this legendary is probably the best because of that crit chance at the very beginning, 100% crit, and you'll be able to utilize this until level 116, where at 116 the legendary effects will actually be disabled, but the stats will still be pretty decent, as that legendary will basically carry you all the way to level 120. And the second legendary I would leave up to you. If you're somebody who maybe wants to play Assassination or Subtlety and you want to have a little more oomph to your AoE damage, then maybe you might want to pick up the Cloak, but for everything else, just about any other Lego works, whether you want to grab Legos for extra mobility, extra survivability, or any kind of damage sources that you want to tag onto your spec. So the second legendary is really just the player choice. The second suggestion I have is to visit your auction house and get as many items as you want in order to help you quest faster. Of course, you can go for flasks and augment runes, as well as potions that you will use in a raid situation in order to increase your damage, which increases your questing speed. But also I would recommend picking up maybe a few Goblin Glider kits, as they can be used to glide from area to area, and there's a little bit of elevation changes. There are some hills in Zuldazar and Kultiras areas, so it might help you get to your quest objectives a little bit faster. And if any other item, I would also recommend a Sky Step potion, as it gives a decent amount of movement speed and a 1-minute cooldown. That's the most that I'm going to grab. You also want to make sure you don't grab way too many things and clutter your bags. You want to make sure you have plenty of space available for you in order to get all the pieces of gear you want, maybe mix and match sets, mix and match weapons, maintain all those Azeroth bonuses you might be collecting as you quest and as you do dungeons, and be able to sell all the different mats or use these mats as you're trying to get through your professions in the expansion. And it helps you out only to bring the bare essentials, which you can grab just about every single item in the game in order to help you quest faster, or you can also just grab the very bare minimum, which gives you more space in your bags in order to, I guess, clutter and collect more things, as well as sell them for gold. The first thing you should take advantage of is the new War Mode. Open up your talents, go to the PvP section of your talents, and enable War Mode. By enabling War Mode, you are increasing the experience gained by 10%. It is worth using it at the very beginning of the expansion, especially since we will be starting on 2 separate islands. The Zandalar Islands will be populated by the Horde, while Kultiran's Islands will be populated by Alliance, and you won't really visit each other's islands until you're at max level. So at the very beginning, when everybody is starting, you will have no one to fight against, no one to slow down your process, so you might as well enable War Mode for that 10% extra XP, as well as the access to Honor Talents, which have a potential to speed up your leveling by giving you mobility, damage, or even survivability. Now, Outlaw is the worst spec out of the 3, but it's really hard to compare all 3 specs of Rogue against one another when it comes to questing. It's like trying to compare 3 giant titans against one another, and a lot of classes don't even come too close to how efficient can a Rogue be. When it comes to Outlaw, you have very steady energy regen, so you're going to have very steady energy gameplay and DPS gameplay when it comes to burning down mobs. You also have a pretty good mix of single target and AoE, so you are a very balanced spec. You don't deal too much AoE damage, You don't deal a crazy amount of single target damage, you deal just about every kind of damage. If anything, one of the perks of Outlaw is the fact that it has insane amounts of self-sustain. Your heal with Crimson Vial and a couple talents involved, and maybe, you know, a second potion from your honor talents makes you almost unkillable. With parry included, Cloak of Shadows included, I mean, this is one spec that can just take on challenges over and over and over, and it feels like you never die, ever. On top of that, Grappling Hook is a great mobility utility. It just lets you grapple 40 yards away every single minute with cooldown reduction to it. So you're gonna use it maybe every 40 seconds, maybe 30, depends how many calm points you spend into finishers and how many you generate. But the spec allows you to get from A to B instead of having to go up around the ramp, around the ladder, you know, just to get to a second story area. You can just kind of beeline your way to it. So if you want to play a spec that's more balanced, Outlaw will be the best one for you, but when it comes to pure AoE grinding and trying to get through quests ASAP, it's probably not the most efficient out of the three. The second best spec I would have to say for leveling will be Assassination. It does have some drawbacks, but it is still very powerful nonetheless and fairly decent for leveling. One of the advantages for Assassination, however, is going to be the fact that you have incredibly bursty AoE damage. The point of playing Assassination is to use a bunch of wombo combo abilities. You're using it together at the same time. The Legendary Cloak to increase your Phantom Knives damage, a talent called Hidden Blaze to increase your Phantom Knives damage. You're using an honor talent called Flying Daggers to also increase your Phantom Knives damage if it has 3 or more people. So you're trying to get a group together of enemies with a stacking buff for incredible Phantom Knives, trying to one-shot them at the same time. Now what's good about this build too is it's not really a mobility heavy focus. You don't have to hurry from quest to quest and try to accomplish them quickly. The spec actually benefits you if you go fairly slowly. Due to your legendary having a stacking buff that happens over time and the talent of Hidden Blades happening over time, the stacks take a while to kind of get together. So as you take your time going from mob to mob, quest area to quest area, a pack of mobs to a pack of mobs, that travel time is actually a good thing. It lets you build up that momentum in order to be able to one-shot a bunch of enemies. The only thing you would want to do is kind of get ballsy and try to pick up at least 3 enemies at a single time in order to get the most amount of effect out of the spec. Past that, unless you're using cooldowns, your single target damage is not going to be that great, so you're going to be fine for rares. But if it's just like one mob you gotta kill and they're not really a rare worthy, you know, it's not worth popping every single cooldown into them, then it might not be the best idea, and then you will see the spec slowing down a little. But there's a lot of packs of mobs that need to be bursted down very quickly, so for you to be able to gather them up and then nuke them down in a single global is what's going to get Assassination a little ahead of the competition. Big credit to Infectious Gaming for coming up with this build in particular. I borrowed majority of the elements from his build for the Assassination one, and I got to try it. Very cool when it comes to AoE, pretty mediocre when it comes to single target in terms of the effectiveness, but it's really cool to be able to use honor talents in order to level faster, and I really appreciate him taking the time to combine those two together and make the initial video and initial findings for this build. The best spec will probably end up being Subtlety. Now it's a very gear dependent spec, so if you don't have any gear, chances are your results will vary. But this spec has all the things you need for taking on the world. You're not really going to be a spec to run in and cleave and AoE a bunch of mobs trying to nuke them, unless you get some legendaries to help you do that, which can be effective because of just how much upfront burst you can get. So in a wombo combo, you can do AoE. In a wombo combo with a few legendaries, you can do insane amounts of single target damage. So rares are never going to be an issue, and generally when you're questing, whether you are AoEing as Assassination that strictly relies on AoE damage, Subtlety can go from mob to mob to mob in a quick succession, giving you very fast gameplay and allowing you to go from opener to opener to opener very quickly, very rapidly, with very little reset time on top of that, making it probably the best spec for this. On mobility front, it is slightly ahead of Outlaw depending on the situation, because you can kind of teleport to the next enemy with every Shadow Strike from your opener. Unlike Outlaw, who can just kind of grapple hook 40 yards in any direction, Subtlety will be reliant on enemies' position to Shadow Step off of them and Shadow Strike, but that should never really be an issue. When it comes to self-sustain, you do have a talent of Soothing Darkness. From enemy to enemy, from quest objective to quest objective, from rare to rare, most of your time you'll be spending stealth, traveling from spot to spot, avoiding enemies, and trying to get through the quest objectives as quickly as possible. While you're hanging out in stealth, you're recouping your health every second with Soothe in Darkness, which gives this spec kind of limited survivability, but kind of where you can take advantage of it. It's a spec where you can go fast or slow, and your progress will be just as fast as your movement speed, I guess, and how fast you're getting through mob from mob to mob. And by being able to kind of focus on every single mob each time, it will reduce just how effective they are at killing you. If you're able to get a mob's health down to 50% or 75 in the opener, as the mob scale towards the level 117, 118, 119, and even in the 120, if you're able to burn through most of their health, the mechanics where mobs start hitting you a lot harder at a later level because of scaling shouldn't bother you at all, which is why a lot of people suggest that Subtlety might end up being the best spec. I tried all three of them, and Subtlety does feel like it has a uniqueness. It doesn't feel like it's that far ahead of Outlaw and Assassination, but if anything, is just very slightly, and for some of you guys it might mean a world of difference. Now that you guys have watched the video, I will say this: if you're somebody who has never experienced BFA and you love yourself a good story, I feel like you'll be able to find that in BFA. In this video, I'm giving you guys my tips on how I am going to be leveling in BFA as somebody who has already experienced the story, experienced at least the Horde side of the story, and as somebody who makes videos on the internet. I want to be able to get to max level to start making content ASAP. So I'm going to be trying to rush to level 120 to show you guys some endgame content as soon as possible. But if you're somebody who's never experienced BFA, you haven't played any of the stories, haven't played on the beta, or if you're somebody who simply cares about the story, then don't feel bad about trying to slow down and enjoy the game at your own pace. And while you're enjoying the game at your own pace, hopefully these builds at least make it a little bit easier for you guys to get around. Thank you guys so much for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.